Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ultimate Fashion History with me, Hallay, Amanda Hallay. And in this episode I have given myself a license to thrill as we celebrate all things James Bond in honor of the new James Bond movie, No Time to Die, which is finally with us, and it has been such a long wait. I'm beside myself with excitement. You might not know this about me, but I am a huge fan of James Bond films. I'm a Bond buff. I really believe that James Bond movies are a wonderful optic through which to look at the last 60 years, not just of fashion history, but of cultural history, of interiors, of graphic design, of science, of food and drink. Bond is fantastic. Of course, there's going to be fashion history, menswear, womenswear, but not just fashion history, no, because fashion is not an island, it's a response. It's not even an island with a villain's lair built into a volcano and surrounded by sharks. So in this episode we're going to be looking at what I think is the best of Bond. Best Bond movies, best Bond villains, best Bond lairs. If you don't agree with me, of course, my lists are very subjective. The best of Bond to me might not be your best of Bond. Then meet me in my lair. Swim through the sharks, meet me in my lair, and we will slug it out. Throughout the episode, I will be popping up with some trivia for you, as well as a little quiz, so have a pen and paper. I'll be giving the questions and the answers throughout the episode, as well as a few hints and tips about how we can all add a touch of James Bond to our lives. I'm so excited. We better get going. 60 years to get through. The best of Bond. Before you accept this mission, just to remind you that I don't do comments here, but you can write to me for my eyes only through my website. I'll leave a link. Or if you'd like to chat about Bond with other 00 agents, join the Ultimate Fashion History Facebook group. We are never shaken or stirred over there. I'll leave a link to that too. Let's start with some fashion and look at what I consider to be the top 5 best and most iconic outfits worn by James himself. Coming in at number 5 is the 3-piece Glen-plaid suit in a conduit cut, as worn by Sean Connery in Goldfinger. And what a fabulous suit it is. The tailor was Anthony Sinclair, who created a lot of Bond suits for Sean's first forays as our favourite 007. Interesting note, Anthony Sinclair was Terence Young's tailor, and of course Terence Young was the director of the first Bond movies, and it was Terence Young who decided to use Anthony Sinclair as the tailor for Bond. So in a way, sartorially, he created James Bond in his own image, and in fact, he asked Sean to sleep in his suits to really get a feel for them, to really feel that he owned them and that he lived in them. Of course, this suit is teamed with a Turnbull and ASSER'S shirt with cocktail cuffs. Now, let's look at those cocktail cuffs. A cocktail cuff is a turn-back cuff that doesn't use a cufflink, but is fastened with 2 buttons. Bond's shirt here is also by Turnbull and ASSER'S, who have created shirts and ties for 12 Bond movies, but the cocktail cuff was in fact first created for David Niven, who would eventually play James Bond himself in the star-studded 67 spoof Casino Royale. Evidently, Terence Young saw some of Niven's shirts being made at Turnbull and ASSER'S and decided to get some of these rakish cuffs for the shirts of James Bond. Fun fact, right? And guess what? Turnbull and ASSER'S still create what they call the Dr. No shirt, as those cocktail cuffs first appeared in Dr. No. Beautiful, isn't it? Not the cheapest shirt around, but then again, when we dress for Queen and country. Coming in at number 4 in my personal top 5 fave James looks, I love George Lazenby's equestrian outfit here in On Her Majesty's Secret Service of 1969. The worsted hacking jacket in a beige and brown check with red overlay, worn with an ivory silk shirt with stock collar and jodhpurs. This is so elegant, and former model Lazenby sure knows how to wear it, doesn't he? But then again, he could wear anything. And do write in and correct me if I'm wrong. But I think George Lazenby was the only Bond ever to wear a kilt and a sporran, and doesn't he look great? Almost as great as my next best of Bond outfit choice. Roger Moore's stone-toned drill safari suit as worn in 1979's Moonraker, although really I could have chosen any of Roger's safari-style suits and jackets. So iconic. This one has 4 flapped pockets and a 4-button closure, but no collar buttoned, buttoned epaulets and matching trousers, and really heralds the coming adventure trend of the early 1980s. Next up, Pierce Brosnan's impeccable tan-toned linen suits, versions of which he wore in a few of his Bond outings. I believe that all of his suits were by Brioni, and this one is paired with a pale lilac shirt and crimson regimental tie with matching socks. Oh my goodness, look how cool and how elegant he looks. And although 007 isn't having such a good time in this scene, I'm having a good time looking at the impeccable pleating of his pants and how, even when held captive and tortured, James still keeps his trouser pleats intact, cool and confident. Brosnan's signature linen speaks perfectly to character, and if I were a fella, I think I'd make these suits my signature look. Next up, any one of Tom Ford's exquisitely tailored suits for Daniel Craig, and this one is worn in No Time to Die, which I haven't even seen yet, but I'll give you my review when I do. This suit appears in the trailer and it is superb. In a grey and black Prince of Wales check with roll-button slim-notched lapels, it's an affectionate homage to Sean Connery's 1960s version of a very similar suit in From Russia with Love. And coming in at my number 1 best Bond outfit choice, well, of course, and it had to be, Bond's ivory dinner jacket with peaked lapels, white pleated shirt, black dress pants and red carnation from 1964's Goldfinger. Every Bond has worn a version of this ensemble, updated for his own era, including Sean, who wore the ensemble again in Diamonds Are Forever of 1971, but with the wider lapel beloved of the 70s. Yes, the ivory dinner jacket with bow tie is possibly the most iconic of Bond's outfits, but can I just give honourable mention to this one? Yes, Bond's pale blue toweling onesie romper with self-belt and zip fastening. It takes a lot to carry this off, but Connery carries. And if any of my boys out there want to 00 up their wardrobes, OLEBAR Brown has a collection of 007 attire that either replicates his wardrobe or is inspired by the movies, including that onesie. I'll leave a link. Now let's take the first of those quiz questions. In Ian Fleming's original Bond novels, what alcoholic beverage does James drink most often? I'll be back later in the episode with the correct answer. Let's have some 00 eats. James is always stuffing his face in both the books and the novels, chiefly because Ian Fleming was such a gourmand and a fan of food and of cooking. But what was arguably James Bond's favourite food? Do you know what it is? It is scrambled eggs, but they have to be made in keeping with Ian Fleming's own recipe. If you're counting calories or want to avoid a heart attack, give these eggs a miss. There is so much butter in this recipe. But if you're on Atkins or keto, as I always am, steam in, basically no carbs. I eat this at least once a week, but I don't make it myself as it takes forever and I'm far too lazy. But my husband, who I see as a bit of a James Bond character himself, kindly whips these up for me at least once a week, and I can't tell you how delicious they are. I'll leave the recipe. All right. Let's look at who I consider to be the best of Bond's buddies. I loved Dame Judi Dench's M and how she changed her portrayal from an almost comedic but strict indulgent grandma type in the Brosnan movies to a cold-hearted administrator for assassins in the Daniel Craig movies. 6 or 7 actors have played Felix Leiter, Bond's buddy in the CIA, but I particularly like Jeffrey Wright, our current Felix, as I think Jeffrey really brings a very distinct personality to 007's American ally. Obviously, we all love Desmond Llewellyn as the original Gadgetmeister Q, but I was so thrilled to find Ben Whishaw take over the role in the Daniel Craig reboots as a much younger sort of tech nerd who seemed to walk straight off the set of the IT Crowd. But surely Bond's best buddy is the long-suffering Miss Moneypenny, originally played by the inimitable Lois Maxwell, who flirted her way through several Bonds over the years. I love her Miss Moneypenny, but I also love Naomi Harris as our current Miss Moneypenny. She takes no guff from James, and nor should she. She's far too smart and far too brilliant. In fact, I don't want Naomi Harris to be Miss Moneypenny. I think she should be promoted to the new M and basically run MI6. And then my pick for the new Miss Moneypenny, actor Patrick Walsh-McBride, who plays Sebastian in the TV show Shakespeare and Hathaway. And if any of you watch him in Shakespeare and Hathaway, you'll understand exactly why he would make the perfect Mr. Moneypenny. Right, let me give you the answer to that first Dr. Know-It-All question. In Ian Fleming's original Bond novels, what alcoholic beverage does James drink most often? Well, of course, you would be absolutely forgiven if you thought the answer was a vodka martini, shaken not stirred. But in fact, although in the books James does drink an awful lot of martinis, the beverage that he bois the most is in fact, I'm sure you've guessed it, champagne. Guzzle 07. Let's have some more fashion and take a look at my personal faves when it comes to female fashion in the JB franchise. And this was hard because women's wardrobe in the Bond movies is always fantastic, with beautiful gowns and kick-ass sportswear, but here are some of my personal faves. All of Grace Jones's wardrobe in 1985's View to a Kill is brilliant. Designer Azzedine Alaei worked with Grace herself on designing the wardrobe, and I particularly like this red and black ensemble that sort of looks like Grace is going to a graduation ceremony on Mars, with that towering mortarboard and sort of cloak feature. I wouldn't wear this myself, but I love how it just screams the 1980s. I would wear this though. This fabulous outfit is worn by Honor Blackman in Goldfinger, 1964. A plunging wraparound blouse in lilac silk teamed with suede pants with tapered legs in aubergine with perfectly matching moccasins. Wow, what a fantastic outfit. Next up, I am crazy about Jane Seymour's incredibly plunging burnt orange gown from 1973's Live and Let Die, with its Moroccan-style embroidery and bishop undersleeve. It was designed by Julie Harris, who was obviously taking her cues from Ossie Clark and Bill Gibb and Sandra Rhodes. It's so of its era, isn't it? Bond as a fashion history optic never fails. I also love the following gown. One of my favorite dresses of all time, Barbara Bach's rhinestone-trimmed backless evening gown in midnight blue from 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me. And here's the back view with the twisted cross straps. It's so of its time, isn't it? So Halston. I adore it. And I am also in love with this gown, worn by the very first Bond girl, Eunice Gayson, this crimson chiffon number from 1962's Dr. No. One shoulder with the most incredible ruching, all of it trimmed and topped off with this beautiful diamond brooch. The gown was designed by Tessa Prendergast, herself an actress and well-known beauty queen. But my number one favorite Bond girl gown is the one that I would love to have in my own wardrobe and would be wearing it right now if I did. This one, Diana Rigg's amazing butterfly sleeve kaftan as worn in Her Majesty's Secret Service. I can't really tell if it's trimmed in sequins or paillettes, but it was designed by Marjorie Cornelius and it just screams 1969, doesn't it? With its vaguely psychedelic paisleys. You know I am a kaftanista and I would do anything for Queen and Country if it meant I could have this dress. Right, let's have our other Dr. Know-It-All quiz question. Which is the only Bond girl, not counting Moneypennies, to have appeared in more than one Bond movie? I'll give you the answer a little later in the episode. Now let's look at the best Bond villains. I like them all, to be honest, but my top two are definitely Scaramanga, as played by Christopher Lee in 1974's The Man with the Golden Gun. Wow, he was a creepy Bond villain, made all the creepier by the fact that he had 3 nipples. Here they are. Count them. 1, 2, 3. But surely everybody's favourite Bond villain has got to be arch nemesis Blofeld, played by several different actors, but none better than Donald Pleasance. Blofeld is iconic with his scar and his mouse suit, effortlessly accessorized with pinky ring and Persian cat. But you know what? I tend to be more drawn to a Bond villain's henchmen than to the villains themselves, and my top 5 henchmen and ladies are as follows. Oddjob, the bowler-hatted baddie who you just can't stay mad at for long. Mayday, as played by Grace Jones, as chic as she was lethal. Coming in at number 3, Blofeld's cat. My number 2 should be number 1, but my soft spot for my number 1 actor trumps all, as many of you know. So Richard Kiel as metal-mouthed megalith Jaws is always a firm favourite, and I love that he actually gets a girlfriend, and we see a softer side to the titanium-toothed terror. And my number 1 favourite James Bond henchman will come as no surprise to many of you. Of course, Knick-Knack, as played by Hervé Villechaize. Knick-Knack's loyalties are tenuous to say the least, but if memory serves, he comes good at the end, preferring to help men with 2 nipples instead of 3. Now here's a question. One of my other all-time favourite Bond characters is hard to classify. He's definitely not on the side of the angels, but he's not really a villain, and he's certainly not a henchman. More of a supernatural entity. Who am I talking about? Oh, I'm sure you've guessed. Baron Samedi, as played with demented delight by the marvellous Geoffrey Holder. Okay, best Bond theme songs, and this one is wildly subjective, so you might definitely want to meet me in my lair to slug it out. Coming in at number 5, The Living Daylights by a-ha. Stop, I really like it. At number 4, You Only Live Twice by Nancy Sinatra. In at number 3, The Man with the Golden Gun. It's a very underrated and almost forgotten Bond theme, but it's fantastic. A rollicking rock song, and look at that cover there. Lulu with her Bieber-inspired hair and makeup and that Deco Revival font. Bond as an optic. Coming in at number 2, it has to be Goldfinger, one of the best songs ever as performed by Dame Shirley Bassey. Goldfinger. It's fantastic, and if you want to be reminded of just how fantastic it is and its healing powers, catch the episode of Frasier, where Frasier, Niles and Martin go to town singing Goldfinger. And coming in as my number 1 favourite Bond theme song, it's got to be Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings. It is so epic. It has movement. This is the Beethoven of Bond. Indulge me and let me share with you some ideas for throwing a James Bond party, simply because I threw one, a very small one, last year with our dear friends Victoria and Chris, who are also big James Bond fans. Step 1. Dress up in your very best Bond or Bond girl attire. That's a must. Rupert, my husband, was taking the picture, so he isn't in it, but he wore a navy blue nautical blazer with brass buttons, a Turnbull and ASSER'S shirt with cocktail cuffs, and a trendy regimental tie. He looked so authentic. What did I serve? Well, in honour of Dr. No and Ian Fleming's GoldenEye estate in Jamaica, jerk chicken and pineapple skewers, and in keeping with Bond's love of eggs, I served deviled eggs with caviar and, just to be British, smoked salmon on crackers with a little piece of dill. In honour of the endlessly underwater Thunderball, I made individual spoons of ceviche and prawn floating in a Bahamian dip, and best of all, Victoria, charged with bringing dessert, created this, a spectacular James Bond cake. For background music, I played my very, very long 007 Spotify playlist. I'll leave a link to that too. And on TV as background, we had 4 hours of live shark action. We rounded the evening off with a few hearty hands of Texas Hold'em, a nod to Casino Royale, while watching The Spy Who Loved Me. What a great night. 00 fun. Okay, here's the answer to the last trivia question. Not counting Moneypennies, who was the only actress to play a Bond girl in more than one movie? Eunice Gayson, who played 007's love interest Sylvia Trench in both Dr. No and To Russia with Love. Now here's a fun piece of Bond trivia. Lois Maxwell was originally cast as Sylvia Trench, and Eunice Gayson was originally cast as Miss Moneypenny, but Lois thought the role of Sylvia was a little bit too risque for her, and so the two actresses simply changed roles. They swapped, just like Betty White and Rue McClanahan did in The Golden Girls. Now let's get to the biggies. Best Bond girls, best Bond movies, the best James Bond, and my picks for the next James Bond, the Bond biggies. Who are the best Bond girls? You know what? They were all gorgeous and they were all great, and so I'm not going to rate them, as I'm not really into women rating and ranking other women from best to worst and all that. Every one of these ladies was wonderful, but I do have some personal faves for personal reasons. Although she seldom appears on any Bond girl favourite list, I personally don't understand why, because I loved Jill St. John as the streetwise, smart-talking Tiffany Chase in Diamonds Are Forever, dressed by Don Feld and really exuding some 70s sass. And here she is again, Grace Jones as Mayday, who was so deliciously different in terms of what we expect from a Bond girl. She just lit up the screen whenever she appeared in View to a Kill. Perfectly purring Honor Blackman as the outrageously named Pussy Galore seemed the perfect match for Connery's Bond. I loved them as a couple, and I just wanted them to stop with the spying and settle down, get married, and have lots of Bond babies. And you all know my feelings about Ursula Andress, the alabaster goddess who truly created the archetype for all Bond girls to follow. I am so besotted with Ursula's beauty that I even did a 20th Century Style Icons episode on her. I'll leave a link to that too. Right, the best Bond movies. Again, a subjective list. These are my favourites. Coming in at number 5, The Spy Who Loved Me. Great story, great effects. It's got Jaws, it's got that fabulous midnight blue dress. And the Egyptian setting tied in perfectly with the Tut mania that was gripping the world in the 70s because of the international touring exhibition of the treasures of Tutankhamun's tomb. Keeping with The Spy Who Loved Me, the best discussion of any Bond movie, although it's more of a monologue, Alan Partridge's second-by-second description of the pre-credit sequence in The Spy Who Loved Me, detailed in the extreme, down to the ski suits worn by the baddies, the lemon piping, coming in at number 4. Another Roger Moore outing, 1973's Live and Let Die. Roger Moore's first Bond movie, and my first Bond movie too. I was 8 years old when it came out, and I remember going to the movie house and thrilling to it all. I loved the New Orleans, New York, Jamaican settings. You already know how much I love Baron Samedi, and it's just an all-round amazing adventures with added alligators. Coming in at number 3, Let's Live the Life Aquatic with Thunderball. People complain that there's way too many underwater scenes, and yes, there are a lot of underwater scenes, but I like them. It's got great villains, great lairs, gorgeous scenery in the Bahamas, and it's the perfect Bond to have on in the background when you're doing something else. Coming in at number 2, from 2006, Casino Royale. Bond was back, and the franchise really got a reboot. Life blown into it with this hard-hitting yet glamorous thriller that read far more like a genuine spy story than a jokey, gadget-heavy kids film. And at number 1, yep, I'm kicking it old school with what is genuinely my all-time favorite James Bond movie. From 1962, Dr. No. It was the first, and it was the only James Bond movie at that point. There was no conception of a franchise then. The word didn't even exist for movies. And so it really stands alone as a sound little thriller with a fabulous atmosphere. And because it was the first, it wasn't as aware of itself as any of the following James Bond movies. And now, who was the best James Bond? And here they all are, and they were all terrific in their own ways. So instead of really ranking and rating, I'll share my thoughts on each. Lovely George Lazenby. Well, let's just say that he had big Connery-shaped shoes to fill. And remember, he wasn't an actor. And also, he was the first new James Bond. So I think the odds were kind of stacked against him. Timothy Dalton tried to bring something new to James Bond with a slightly more sensitive side. It didn't really work for everyone. Personally, I love Tim Dalton, but I didn't really engage with him as Bond. Yet I admire his moxie for trying something a little bit different. Pierce Brosnan was great, smooth and suave, and wow, did he know how to wear those suits. In my opinion, however, he wasn't given the greatest vehicles for his outing as Bond, and I don't mean snazzy cars, so through no fault of his own, he doesn't make it to my personal top 3. And coming in at number 3, the Bond that I grew up with, Roger Moore, whom my dad once spent a boozy afternoon with in the 70s and said he was the most charming and interested gentleman you could ever imagine. Roger Moore brought a great deal of sardonic humor to his outings as 007, including some rather cringy dad jokes here and there, and I utterly enjoyed him as a cool and unflappable James Bond. And yet, bitter and tormented with a boatload of baggage, Daniel Craig is, in my opinion, the most real of the Bonds. You really believe he's a man who has hardened his heart to cope with his career as a government assassin. Yet, just below the surface, you see a fragility he always has to hide. The most complex of the Bonds, Daniel Craig was also one of the very best in my opinion. And in at number 1, oh, you knew I was going to choose the OG. Sean Connery created the movie role, and I think that every subsequent Bond borrowed a little from the original. In short, Connery created a character that every other Bond actor had to pay at least a little service to, and in my mind he left big shoes to fill. Shoes that were filled very nicely in very unique ways by all of the Bonds that followed. But who will be the next James Bond? Well, I'm putting my money on Bridgerton star Regé-Jean Page as our next 007. Come on, he has absolutely every quality we hope for in a Bond. He's got the looks, he's got the charisma, he's got the dash, the sexiness, the suavity. He'd make a fantastic James Bond, and a very popular one too, I reckon. And if for some reason he doesn't want to do it, can we have James Krishna Floyd from the Good Karma Hospital? I'm obsessed with him. He is so suave, so dashing. And is it wrong for me to tell you that I'd like to see him walking out of the ocean? And if he doesn't want to play James Bond, I think Handmaid's Tale star Otis Agbenle really would bring that brooding intensity to Bond. He is such a terrific actor. I think he'd bring his own depth to the role of James. I'd love to see him handle 007. But the big question is, who is going to be the next Bond girl? Well, I think we all know who the next Bond girl should be, don't we? Me! Of course, come on, over the past 60 years, Bond girls have come in all shapes and sizes. But there has never been a chubby and annoying middle-aged one. I think it's time, and I think that's me. If the Broccoli family are watching this, I am available to be the next Bond girl. I should have it put in my contract, however, that I don't do any fighting, I don't really do any running, but I do make a mean martini. Shaken, not stirred. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you had fun.